Thank you, Lohman, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am the State Director of the Pennsylvania National Federation of Independent Business. We're the largest advocate organization in America for small business owners, with more than 14,000 Pennsylvania members and more than 350,000 nationwide. You may have heard about our group. We're the lead plaintiff in a little health care case down in Washington that's about to go before the United States Supreme Court. And we will prevail. It is indeed a genuine honor for me to introduce Senator Pat Toomey, because unlike most of his colleagues, his voting record matches his rhetoric. Senator Toomey has been among the most consistent supporters of small business in Washington. I suppose that comes from the education he received running a tavern with his father and brothers, cleaning tables, sweeping floors, managing inventory, paying bills, making payroll, competing and creating jobs. Pat Toomey supports small business because it's in his blood. He retired from Congress in 2004. With a lot more to offer Pennsylvania and our nation, Pat ran for the United States Senate in 2010. He campaigned from Pottsville to Pittsburgh on a promise to reduce the deficit, reduce the government, enlarge our freedom to earn our money, build our own futures, and be left alone by Washington. Outnumbered and outspent, Pat Toomey won anyway. Since having returned to public life, the senator is distinguished as one of the most thoughtful conservatives in Washington. He is a member of the Banking, Budget, Commerce, and Joint Economic Committees, and last year was chosen by his colleagues to serve on the Deficit Reduction Supercommittee. There, he offered a plan that made so much sense. It would have reduced taxes for everyone, increased revenue, and lowered the deficit. It made so much sense that it was rejected by the president and his allies in the Greek parliament. I mean Senator Reid and the U.S. Senate. Nevertheless, Senator Toomey emerged as a leader and an ally for small business owners and taxpayers here and across the country. And on behalf of our NFIB members and taxpayers, I'd like to thank the senator, and it's my pleasure to introduce him now, Senator Pat Toomey.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. You are very, very kind. Kevin, thank you for that kind introduction. Fred, it's really me. It's not a ghost. I'm here. And I'm delighted to see you. I think the world of this guy, and I think we all know Fred Anton is the senior statesman of the conservative movement in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we thank you for your leadership for many years. Also appreciate his leadership of PMA, a great organization. Lohman Henry, I don't know where Lohman has gone to, but I know he's here. There he is. And Lohman, congratulations to you on another outstanding job. We sure appreciate your leadership, and I'm grateful for the chance to be here. I just want to take one quick minute to share with you, to kind of do a victory lap, if you don't mind. But something very constructive happened on the Senate floor yesterday, and that is so rare that we need to celebrate when we can. And so let me just briefly tell you the story. It does actually feed into the message that I have for this afternoon. And what happened was, much to his credit, Eric Cantor, the House Majority Leader, a couple of weeks ago, rolled up a package of 6 bills that are all designed in different ways to help reduce the regulatory burden that makes it difficult for growing companies to raise capital, the capital they need to grow and to hire new workers. Now, I'm biased in favor of this package because 3 of the 6 bills were the House companion measures to legislation that I introduced in the Senate. So I was delighted when it passed the House, 390 to 23, and I was delighted and admittedly surprised, but pleasantly surprised, when the President of the United States endorsed the package. So there was a question as to what's going to happen in the Senate, which of course has become the graveyard of good ideas. But again, to his credit, Senator Harry Reid decided eventually to put the House-passed bill the Republican bills for job growth and capital formation to put it on the Senate floor. And he did that this week. And we had to fight off a number of amendments that were designed to gut the bill, to weaken it, to erode the pro-growth features. But in the end, we prevailed. We fought off those amendments, and yesterday afternoon, the Senate of the United States passed the most pro-growth bill that I've seen on the Senate floor since I've been in the Senate by 75 to 23 votes. This bill is going to be on the President's desk sometime next week, and the President has already indicated he's going to sign it into law. And the result is that many hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses in Pennsylvania, and who knows how many thousands across the country, are going to find it easier to raise the capital they need to grow, to be able to expand their operations, buy new equipment, hire new workers. This is the kind of pro-growth policy that doesn't cost a penny of taxpayer money, that's going to help to move our country in the right direction. And you know, it hasn't escaped my attention that this capital formation bill fits in perfectly with the message that I have for you this afternoon, which is about capitalism and how I think we ought to think about and talk about our free enterprise system and our system of capitalism. But I'm going to start with a quick story because it sort of illustrates an important point that I want to make. And if you've heard this story before, please bear with me. But it really does illustrate the idea. See, according to the story, once there was an occasion on which a big city economist decided to go out for a drive in the country. So he goes out on a long drive, winds around, and then discovers along the way he's completely lost. Doesn't have a clue where he is. He's looking for somebody who can give him directions, and he rounds a bend and he sees a shepherd who has on a hillside a huge, huge flock of sheep. So he pulls over and he asks the shepherd for directions back to the city. The shepherd happily complies, and as the big city economist turns to get back in his car, he stops and says, just one thing to the shepherd. He says, I know this is going to sound funny, but I'd love to challenge you to a wager. I bet you I could tell you exactly how many sheep you have out here on this fine afternoon, and if I do, can I take one of them with me? The shepherd looked at him and thought, this is the most ridiculous thing he's ever heard. He said, you can't possibly guess the correct number of this flock, but sure, I'll humor you. Go ahead, you tell me the right number, and you can have one of the sheep. So the economist looks out, he scans the hillside, he does some fancy mental math, and he says, you have 1,142 sheep out here this afternoon. The shepherd was blown away. I can't believe it. I don't know how in the world you did it. That's exactly right. That's the number I have. He said, well, a deal's a deal. Go help yourself. So the economist walks out, he grabs one of the animals, tucks it under his arm, and he's heading back to the car when the shepherd runs after him. He says, hold on, just a minute, just a minute. He said, fair's fair, right? Can I have a chance to win my animal back? He said, okay, sure, how are you going to do that? He said, if I can guess your profession, you'll give it back to me, right? He said, sure, you couldn't possibly guess my profession. He goes, no, you're an economist. The guy was shocked. He said, I can't believe it. How in the world did you know that I'm an economist? He said, because you're walking away with my dog. So, there's a moral to this story. The moral of the story is that when we conservatives defend the free enterprise system, when we defend capitalism, too often we're like the big city economists. We get the numbers right, but we miss the big picture. We miss what's truly important. As much as we advocate for and defend free enterprise, I think often we don't give it the defense that it really deserves. Now, the left uses moral criticisms of a free enterprise capitalist system. They'll argue that it's cruel, it's unfair, it's dangerous, and sometimes we fall into the trap of offering just practical rebuttals. We talk about the number of jobs and the wealth creation and the innovation that capitalism fosters. But the impression that people might take away from this kind of debate is that capitalism is almost a necessary evil. Something we put up with because it's materially successful, but something that maybe we think is a little unseemly. See, this is exactly the debate that the left would like us to have, because that's the debate that they win and we lose. And capitalism deserves better than a merely practical, empirical, materialistic defense. I believe that capitalism isn't good because it works. It works because it's good. And the big government alternatives are not wrong because they fail. They fail because they're wrong. That's the case for our system of free enterprise. That's the case it deserves. It's the case the American people need to hear, and it's the case that we conservatives need to make. Now, that capitalism does work is an empirical fact, and it's an important fact. That's why free enterprise remains an overwhelmingly popular system with the American people, and that's why those on the left, including President Obama, who want to attack our free enterprise system, they seldom do it directly. Instead, they like to create straw men and substitute caricatures for the reality. Capitalism, President Obama says, cannot, quote, be a free license to take whatever you can from whomever you can. He says he doesn't believe in, quote, bigger government, only that we need smart regulations to prevent irresponsible behavior. He attacks America's traditional model of limited government and personal responsibility as, quote, you're on your own economics, which he says fits well on a bumper sticker, but it doesn't work. It has never worked. Really, Mr. President? Capitalism's never worked? I get the feeling that maybe in all the time the President spent community organizing and lowering the levels of the seas, he may not have studied enough history. I think maybe we need a little bit of a refresher course about the times when, in fact, capitalism has worked. Say, the entire 19th and 20th centuries, for starters. Seriously. Go back to the early 19th century when capitalism was beginning to really flourish in Great Britain, and that small island nation became a global empire. About the same time, a capitalist United States quickly went from being a third world colonial backwater to the richest per capita country in the world, despite the fact that almost every single person who came here with absolutely nothing. It was capitalist America that won World War I, World War II, and the Cold War. And compare the contrasts that we've seen throughout the 20th century. North Korea compared to South Korea, a flourishing Israel compared to backward neighbors, compare Taiwan to the mainland China before the communists began to capitulate and introduce some capitalism. You know, I think this is a very compelling fact. Since Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher reinvigorated capitalism in the West and encouraged its spread throughout the World Bank reports that the global poverty rate was cut in half, from 52% to 26%. So the empirical case is very simple. Free enterprise provides a clear path for the industrious to become wealthy, for the poor to become middle class, and for the middle class to build a prosperous, secure life for themselves and their kids. Think about what being middle class in a free enterprise society like the United States means. It's not just having phones or even cell phones, but it's smartphones. Not just a computer, but high-speed internet access and often an iPad. It's not just a car, but often it's two cars, and they're safer, and they're more fuel efficient and more durable than anything you could buy just 10 years ago. Thanks to a free market competition, everything we need constantly gets better and becomes more affordable. As the theologian Michael Novak put it, after 5 millennia of blundering, human beings finally figured out how wealth can be produced in a sustained, systematic way. That's the history of capitalism. And contrary to the president's blinkered view of history, capitalism has worked. It has always worked, and it still works. But as true and important and compelling as the factual evidence is, as the empirical case is, it's not sufficient. People are, Americans are, and they should be, more interested in what's good than in merely what's efficient. Happily for our cause, capitalism is both. And so I will suggest 3 basic ways in which capitalism is not only moral, but it's morally superior to every rival economic system that's opposed to it, from fascism to communism to socialism to Obamonomics. First point I would make is that a free enterprise system provides everyone an equal opportunity to define and pursue his own success. Capitalism recognizes that the essence of human happiness is not just getting money, but it's creating value in your own life and in the lives of others. This concept is something that the economist Arthur Brooks has written a lot about. He calls it earned success, and it speaks to the knowledge that your effort, your sacrifices, your investment in yourself pays off. Arthur Brooks asks a question that kind of cuts to the heart of this. He says, the last time you got a raise at work, did you celebrate the day you got the news, or a few weeks later when you got the new paycheck? Most people probably agree it's the moment you get the news. Because the reason you're celebrating isn't only the material success that's following, but it's the satisfaction also of knowing that your events have been successful, they were recognized, and they've paid off. That's success. And in a free enterprise system, success can be earned by anyone. Another great virtue of a capitalist free enterprise system is that it's a meritocracy. Right? Markets don't ask the color of your skin or who your parents were. If you build a better mousetrap, people will buy it. And just as important, under capitalism, success must be earned. You know, it's no coincidence that capitalism's most vocal opponents are usually found in the elites. Those are the people who have the most to lose in a dynamic meritocracy that capitalism is. Just as the free enterprise system rewards the innovators and hard work, it also punishes complacent elites. So the elites know that the rules of a true free enterprise system can't be rigged. Those rules level the playing field for everyone, and that's why wherever it goes, a capitalist system destroys rigid systems of class and caste and entitled privilege. As a story that I think is a great metaphor for the way the freedom that's inherent in capitalism enables success beyond mere money, I want to share with you. It's a story about a guy who's a bit of a hero of mine. His name is Dick Fosbury. Some of you may know the name. Some of you may know his story. Dick Fosbury grew up in Oregon in the 1950s and 60s. And he went out for track and field in part because he wasn't good enough to play basketball. This is a very familiar story to me. I gave basketball a try, and I stayed at it until my coach took me aside one day and said, Pat, you know, you're small, but you're slow. But I digress. Dick Fosbury took up track and field and found he wasn't winning races, and so he decided to try the high jump. That wasn't working out so well either. So one day he was tired of losing, and he just, for the heck of it, tried something different. He tried to jump over the bar shoulder first, which is totally ridiculous. Everybody at the time knew that's not the way you high jump, except that he got over a pretty high bar. So he started playing around with this. He started actually jumping with his back straight to the bar. I went over head first, back arched, feet flopping behind him. It was crazy. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. But he started clearing ever higher heights. Still, he was seen more as a novelty than a real athlete. He wasn't recognized. He wasn't offered a single college scholarship until he had gotten out of high school and he won the junior national championships. But even then, the first day he arrived on campus and his coach came up to him, and the first thing he said was, you got to jump the normal way. So he did, and he lost a foot off his best high jump heights. So pretty soon he went back to his new technique, and he ignored the critics. He tried out for the 1968 U.S. Olympic team, and he made the team. Now, he was still criticized. He was even ridiculed. But the critics stopped laughing at him in the summer of 1968 when he won a gold medal and set a new Olympic record in the high jump. 4 decades later, the Fosbury flop is by far the dominant technique in the sport. So the story of Dick Fosbury is rightly told as a parable about personal initiative and hard work and creativity, and all of that is true. But I would argue there's another hero that's often unsung in this story. And the hero is the official rules of competitive high jump. How so, you ask? Well, the rules of the sport are very simple. Jump off one foot and don't knock over the bar. That's pretty much all there is to it. They don't tell you how many steps to take or what part of you has to go over first or anything else. All that really matters is that you clear the bar, and the rest is up to you. So this framework gives high jumpers an equal opportunity to adapt, to innovate, to experiment, and to succeed according to their own choices and ingenuity and skills and talents. In a word, it gives them freedom. Or as President Obama might put it, the rest of the high jumpers were victims of "you're on your own track and field." By the way, can you imagine if the Obama administration wrote the rules for high jumping? I tell you, they'd be 1,000 pages long, they'd cost $1 trillion to implement, and they'd regulate everything right down to the kind of contraceptive coverage that the jumpers had to have, right? See, it's, you know, in the case of Dick Fosbury, it's freedom that allowed him to experiment, obviously, and to create. It's true, it allowed him to jump higher than any Olympian had ever jumped, but beyond the material reward of the record and the gold medal, think of the even more meaningful reward, the moral reward, the personal satisfaction of his knowing that he'd blazed his own trail. He'd invented a whole new way of doing something, and he had revolutionized his sport. Freedom enabled Dick Fosbury to win much more than a track meet, just as it enables all of us in a capitalist system to win much more than a job or a raise or even a fortune. The second great moral value of capitalism is that it encourages us, whether we want to or not, to live lives of service to others. And that's because every transaction in a free enterprise system is voluntary. Right? People are rewarded to the degree to which they add value to other people's lives, because if you're not adding value, the other person isn't going to purchase whatever you're trying to sell. This was Adam Smith's great insight in The Wealth of Nations, that the invisible hand that harnesses an individual's self-interest also serves everyone else. So in a free enterprise system, whether you're a teacher or a plumber or a banker or you run a soup kitchen, the only way to really succeed is to help other people. Contrary to the president's insults, under capitalism, no one can take anything from anyone else, except criminals who usually go to jail and politicians who sometimes don't. But this is why capitalism encourages not only prosperity but virtue as well. It's the process of a voluntary exchange system. It depends on personal trust, so everyone has a strong incentive to be trustworthy. And meanwhile, everyone is responsible for his own actions under a true free enterprise system, so everyone has an incentive to act responsibly. So whether you mean it or not, every rung you climb in a free enterprise system, you're bringing other people up along with you. When you earn your success, you enjoy your rewards, but everyone else gets to enjoy the value that you've created, the service you render. When I think about how capitalists help society, I think there's a great example in one of the most successful capitalists of all time. Think about Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the history of the world. And I understand that he plans to give away virtually all of his vast fortune to charity. And I commend him for this. I respect that, I admire it, and I hope that his philanthropy is enormously successful. But even if his philanthropic efforts are wildly successful, does anyone seriously think that they will do as much good for humanity as he did by having revolutionized the computer industry and developing an operating system that allows for unlimited applications and made computers accessible and usable and available to everybody? I'll go out on a limb and predict that Bill Gates did far more in the service of humanity while pursuing profits in a capitalist venture than he ever will in giving away all the profits he reaped. Finally, and most importantly, capitalism protects human freedom and serves human dignity. It protects freedom generally by creating, in capitalism's many industries and companies and enterprises, dispersed centers of power and opportunity and progress that are unconnected and independent of the state. And meanwhile, the many voluntary institutions of civil society, including business, but all kinds of institutions, from large ones to the local Boy Scout troop, they serve as organic, preemptive checks against the government's tendency to always grow, become more powerful, and diminish our freedom. Collectively, they serve as a natural bulwark against tyranny. Free enterprise empowers us to live our own lives, and thus it encourages and it pressures the state to respect our freedom to do so. And I believe it's the freedom to think and to choose that makes us fully human. And on the other hand, every choice that we're prevented from making, every responsibility the government takes off our hands, is a small piece of our lives ourselves that's taken from us. Thus, the great threat of big government isn't that it makes us poor, but that it makes us less. As government gets bigger, we get smaller. So among the many political values that we hold dear, I think that human dignity demands that we place and keep personal freedom at the top. And this is the last most important moral defense of democratic capitalism. Alone among all the economic systems of the world, capitalism seeks not to master the individual, but to serve human dignity. The most important freedom capitalism offers to every individual is not the freedom to be rich, but the freedom to be human. And this is the moral case that capitalism deserves, a moral case based on the free enterprise system's moral virtues: equality of opportunity, service to others, and respect for human dignity. Now, the president disagrees with all this, right? Despite capitalism's centuries of empirical and moral success, he instead sees a corrupt system of exploitation, greed, and inequality. To him, capitalism is, in a word, unfair. Now, this is the debate the president wants to have, not really about capitalism, but about fairness. And I say, let's bring it on. The president calls our tradition of free enterprise, you're on your own economics. He says he wants a return to the American values of fair play, to make sure everyone in America gets a fair shot at success, an economy where everyone gets a fair shot, everyone does their fair share, and everyone plays by the same set of rules. Fairness. I don't know about you, but it's a little hard for me to take. After 3 years of unprecedented bailouts, handouts, takeovers, crony capitalism, and class warfare, President Obama is lecturing us about fairness. The president believes that fairness is the reason he should be reelected. I say fairness is the reason he must be defeated. You know, the president is right that he's presiding over an inequality crisis, but it's not so much the inequality between rich and poor, it's the inequality between government and everybody else. You want to... Let's talk about fairness. General Motors and Chrysler had a fair shot. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had more than a fair shot. Banks who traded subprime mortgages and subprime loans, they had a fair shot. They had a fair shot and they blew it. And then the president took our money and bailed them out. You want to talk about fairness? Was it fair that Solyndra got $500 million of our money to build solar panels that didn't work? No. Is it fair that GM got taxpayer money to build a plug-in car that nobody wanted to buy? No. Was it fair that poor children in Washington, D.C. were kicked out of their schools because the president pulled the plug on their scholarships to appease the teachers' union? No. Was it fair to tell people that they could keep their health insurance under Obamacare when they knew it wasn't true? And is it fair that drivers are having to pay $4 a gallon for gasoline while American oil deposits go undeveloped? That's not fairness. That's the opposite of fairness. To me, fairness is earning one's reward from honest effort. To the president, fairness means redistributing wealth from those who earned it to those who did not. That's not fairness. That's not freedom. That's dependency. And whether it's redistributed up to corporate cronies and big labor or down to the poor, government redistribution of wealth undermines all three of the moral values of free enterprise. Dependency that results from redistribution undermines equality of opportunity by dividing our country according to class and race and connections and voting blocks. It undermines service to others by assuming this pernicious notion that one person has a right to live off someone else. And it undermines human dignity by exploiting taxpayers while hollowing out the character and initiative of the people the government intends to help. Now, all across the political spectrum, there's a strong commitment to a real social safety net. Those of us who are fortunate enough to take care of ourselves believe we have a responsibility to look after those who can't. But there's a difference between America's long-standing commitment to help the disconnected poor and this president's policy of crony capitalism that enriches the well-connected elite. And even in those instances where the president does indeed intend to redistribute wealth to the poor, his policies very often hurt the very people they're meant to help. Capitalism is not only the greatest anti-poverty program ever designed, it may be the only successful anti-poverty program that we've ever seen. Well, it is an empirical and irrefutable fact, but it's also an essential moral fact that capitalism serves the poor and reduces poverty so much better than a handout. You know, it's no accident that as capitalist nations enrich themselves, life improves for everyone. Life expectancy rises, the infant mortality rate falls, systems of education and healthcare get better, literacy rates rise, and the greatest improvement in all of these measures occurs for the people who are poorest. You know, throughout history, rich and powerful people in every society have always had these high standards of living and all of these benefits. But it's only in free enterprise societies, like the United States has always been, that these benefits are available to ordinary working people. President Obama disagrees with all this. He thinks his policies are fair, and no doubt the people he spends his time with, the green energy executives and the union bosses and lobbyists and the trial lawyers and government bureaucrats, I'm sure they all enthusiastically agree. But for all of his rhetoric, this president has proven by his actions that he wouldn't know fairness if it were written in a bold font on his teleprompter. You set aside all the rhetoric and you look at the actual actions of his record, and it's very clear that this president work hard and who play by the rules and live within their means to bail out the people who don't. So the choice that we face, I would argue, is not just about capitalism, it's also about morality. It's about what fairness really means. Does fairness mean that everyone gets a fair shot at success, or does it mean that politicians can protect their friends from the consequences of their actions? Does it mean we succeed according to the value we create, or does it mean that some succeed according to the influence they can peddle in their campaign contributions? Does it mean everyone's free to define and pursue their own happiness, or does it mean that everyone must pursue the kind of happiness that's decided for them by some politician? Is everyone equal, or are some people more equal than others? These are the true stakes in the debate that's before us today. It's not simply about the wealth that capitalism creates, but the deeper, more meaningful human flourishing that capitalism, and capitalism alone, enables. Now, the president understands very well what's at stake. That's why his case against capitalism is a moral one, not an empirical one. He understands there is no empirical case against capitalism to be made. History has dispensed with them. But in this debate, the empirical case is just not enough, because this is fundamentally a moral debate about the character and the nature and the destiny of a great nation. It's not so much about what we should do as it is about who we should be. And I believe in this debate the American people are with us. The moral values of capitalism, equality of opportunity, service to others, and human dignity are the very values on which our freedom, our prosperity, and our very republic depend. These values aren't fashionable everywhere, but they never have been. Never forget, 236 years ago, the leading powers of the world scoffed at America's embrace of this set of values. 236 years later, they're no longer the leading powers of the world. They were wrong. We were right. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that America is different. America is exceptional. We always have been. We still are today. And if we win this debate today between the moral triumph of capitalism and the fundamental unfairness and moral bankruptcy of Obamonomics, then we can rest assured the 21st century will be another great American century. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Was instructed by the senator's staff that they are a little bit behind schedule, so we're going to dispense with questions, and I'm now going to introduce Loman Henry, who will introduce our next speaker. Thank you.